Well, this week we have the Lexus GX 550, and of course, at the time that I decided to film this, it's unseasonably windy right now in Atlanta. But this was kind of a strange week because Lexus dropped off the GX 550 right as I was flying out of town. So Megan took the first half of the week and did her part of the review, and then I returned and did mine. And that meant that the GX 550 had a lot of commuting time under its belt. So what follows is a definite real-world, everyday use case of the Lexus GX 550 from Megan's perspective and my perspective, just not all together. All right, first things first, the Lexus GX 550 is a fantastic looking SUV. We're gonna do a little quick walk around here because I want you to fully grasp how good looking this thing is from all of the angles. This is the Overtrail Plus version, so this is the coolest version of the Lexus GX 550, and it's got the two-tone roof and door handles. It just looks awesome. This has looked awesome ever since it came out. I was at the reveal last summer, of the Lexus GX 550, and I just think from all angles, this thing looks exactly like you'd want a Toyota truck to look. It's just a stupendous looking SUV. It's a fantastic redesign. My apologies for the wind, but it's an excellent looking off-road vehicle, and I love the fact that it came out at the same time as the Lexus TX, which is sort of your, let's say, your family one that makes more sense for most people, and then the Lexus GX is your off-roady one that replaces the GX 460. Now, the GX 460 was never something that I found to be all that good looking. I thought it was functional, I guess you would say, whereas the GX 550, it looks pretty great from all angles. So definitely no complaints there. Megan and I were in total agreement about that one. Now, underneath the hood of the Lexus GX 550 is the 3.4-liter twin turbo V6. No hybridization in this one. It makes 349 horsepower and 479 pound-feet of torque, and that's running through a 10-speed automatic transmission. Now, that's different than it is in the Toyota Land Cruiser. The Toyota Land Cruiser has the iForce Max, and that's making 326 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque. So very similar numbers. Now, the Land Cruiser, I just returned from an off-road drive with Toyota and the Land Cruiser. You can check out that video below. In fact, I'll link the relevant videos to the GX and the Land Cruiser down below so you guys can check them out. The Land Cruiser off-road is fantastic. So you would imagine this would be too. One of the things I like about the Land Cruiser's iForce Max Turbo 4 is that you have that instant torque from the electric motor. This power plant feels smoother and more refined and not as noisy. Gas mileage for both isn't super great. This thing has been averaging about 16 miles to the gallon. So this isn't going to be your fuel economy champion. Neither is the Land Cruiser, really. I'm not sure you're worried about that if you're getting something like a Lexus GX 550. Why not the V8, the old stupendously reliable V8? Well, you know, Toyota says for emissions like everybody else, so we get the twin turbo V6. Now, I've had this before in the LX 600, had it in the LS. It's a fantastic engine. It's super smooth. Does it feel super powerful? Well, no, we'll talk more about that in the driving portion, but it is really smooth and it's pleasant to live with. Now, let's talk briefly about this thing's off-road chops, because I'll talk about it here, and then if you're interested, you can jump over to the Land Cruiser video. You can kind of see what that thing was capable of off-road, because this thing is very similar, but there is one major difference in the drive portion that I want to talk about. Now, I'll film this on the ground, so it's all off-roady, even though we're not going off-road. I'm just pointing to things. So as you can imagine, this thing has full-time four-wheel drive. You have 4 high and 4 low. You have a center locking diff and a rear locking diff, which is pretty awesome. You also have adaptive dampers that work pretty well. We'll talk about that more in the drive portion in a second. But one of the big differences here with the Lexus versus the Toyota Land Cruiser is the inclusion of the KDSS system, okay? That's the kinetic dynamic suspension system, and this is a new one called e-KDSS. Now, KDSS was praised a lot for how well it allowed the vehicles to ride, the previous gen GX and a couple of the Toyota 4Runners, while still having a lot of wheel articulation off-road. And it was a hydraulic system that was sort of in a closed loop that ran through the vehicle. Now, what they've done with the e-KDSS, it's more difficult to say than you might think, is that they've added these circuits to the front and the rear so that it's like fully just the front and rear sway bar disconnect, which allows the wheel articulation to be even more independent, especially front to rear, while still giving you that comfortable ride in everyday driving and on the highway. That is a big deal. In fact, it's a bigger deal than I would have thought. So let's talk about that while we drive it. So unfortunately, I don't get to take the GX off-roading. However, I did just go off-roading in the Toyota Land Cruiser. So if you haven't seen that video, go check it out. I imagine that there are some strong similarities, the main difference being the powertrain, which we're going to talk about a little bit here in a second, the transmission, as well as the e-KDSS suspension system that I probably have already mentioned at this point in the powertrain section. Now, on the note of the e-KDSS, I was fully prepared to just sort of dismiss the GX. I really like the Land Cruiser. Let me go ahead and say that. I've probably already said it numerous times. I really like the Toyota Land Cruiser a lot. And I was sort of like, that's probably going to be our next family vehicle. You know, the girls are older. We don't need all the space, yada, yada, yada. And Megan, who actually drove this before me, had told me that like she was really enjoying this thing. She's like, oh, I really like the GX. I'm liking it more and more, which I was like, yeah, of course, you know, it's the Lexus. It's got a little bit nicer materials. Of course you do. And I wasn't prepared to really think that differently about the drive and the driving characteristics compared to the Land Cruiser, because they're essentially the same vehicle. But I was wrong. I actually am really enjoying the way this drives. And from the enthusiast perspective, let me give you a few reasons why. Because I've been commuting in it, all right? Like the most boring thing you can do. So this is like the most normal review ever, which is kind of the whole point of our channel. I've been driving to work in this, and the ride handling balance really surprised me. I tried all the modes from sport to normal to comfort, and I was most surprised by comfort, okay? It's in comfort mode right now. And I really think that the flexibility of that e-KDSS system, being able to articulate the suspension so much in off-road driving, but still provide you with this compliant ride. And the adaptive suspension in this feels more, I don't know, buttoned down and more comfy while still maintaining control than I was totally expecting. I thought this thing was going to be very truckish, which it is. It does feel like driving a truck, which we actually like. We both enjoy trucks. Megan really does. But what I wasn't prepared for was how little it rocks from side to side and how little it seems floaty. Try not to get hit. It gives me the signal at the roundabout, hey, don't pull out, there's people coming. Appreciate those safety systems. And this thing like really doesn't rock at all. In comfort mode, the ride is quite nice. I would almost say that when you try to firm it up in the sportier modes, you feel a little bit of the texture from the tires, you know, the little more off-road biased tires. And you feel a little bit more of that vibration because it's a truck frame, right? So driving around in normal and comfort mode, it's very pleasant. Another thing I was totally not expecting to like so much is the steering. It's light, but it's pretty quick and accurate. The brake pedal has a nice firm feel to it. This is a very, very easy vehicle to live with, both in a daily commuting kind of way, what I've been doing, and I would imagine with all the off-road capability of the Land Cruiser. So like I said, go check out that video to see. We had a lot of fun driving Toyota trucks off-road. And this thing, I'm really surprised. The ride especially, really surprised by that. I didn't think it was gonna feel different, and it does. It does feel different than the Land Cruiser. Different from the Land Cruiser, proper grammar. Sorry, I used to teach English. Welcome to the channel. So yeah, that stuff is great. Now the powertrain, the 10-speed automatic, it does a better job of not hunting around than I thought it did last time I had the LX. I had the LX a while back. I'll link these videos in the description if you want to check them out. And I thought the 10-speed was a little hunty with the same exact powertrain. So you had the twin-turbo V6, you've got the 479 pound-feet of torque, which is good. See that bridge expansion there? It just gets right back. I can't say enough good things about the way this thing rides on a day-to-day boring commuting basis, okay? This 10-speed seems to be a little bit more responsive, not hunting gears, not bouncing around so much. So I do prefer that. I don't think that the twin-turbo V6 feels super powerful. It's very smooth. And in some ways, it's quieter and more refined and smoother than you get with the iForce Max Turbo 4 in the Land Cruiser. The difference with the Land Cruiser, because it's a hybrid, is you get that immediate torque, right? You get that instant torque when you're off-roading, and in traffic, it will shut the engine off. So it feels a little more, you know, efficiency is not really, you know, it's splitting hairs between these vehicles, but it does feel more efficient, okay? This thing I have tried, it's averaging 16.3 miles per gallon. I've literally tried to be as efficient as possible in this thing, and I, like, literally 16, you're gonna get 16 miles per gallon, okay? You're gonna get 16 miles per gallon if you have a GX, just, you know, that's the way it is. So know that. Will the Land Cruiser do better? Yeah, it was getting 16 or so when we were off-roading it a couple weeks back, which in those conditions, in that environment, was pretty good. Are you gonna get much above 16 in the type of driving I've been doing? No, maybe 20 if you were really light-footed, but probably not much more than that. Is that a deal breaker for you? I mean, this thing costs 20 grand more, as you see it here, than the Land Cruiser I was driving, so I doubt that's a deal breaker for people. But I'm just surprised. I'm not surprised because this is a nice vehicle and it's a, you know, Lexus GX. I'm just surprised that I actually like it so much more from behind the wheel than the Land Cruiser, because I really like the Land Cruiser a lot, and I was thinking this was just going to be a copy of that. So I hope that provides you some value from behind the wheel. Are there some negatives? Not really. I would say the biggest negative from my perspective is you do still get some shudders through the structure because this is a truck. I don't consider that a negative because, like I said, Megan and I like trucks. Like I was expecting this to be a truck. But if you think this is going to be something like the Lexus TX, it's not. The Lexus TX is like a pillow compared to this. It's a weird comparison, but I mean, it's super comfy, and this is a truck. So, you know, as long as your expectations are in check. Oh, this does have the proactive driving assist. So Toyota and Lexus's new system called proactive driving assist, which will brake slightly for you and steer you away from danger if you try to, like, go into someone's lane, they're in your blind spot. So some people have mixed feelings about proactive driving assist. They think maybe the brake intervention is a little too strong. I think you get used to it. I actually like it more than I don't, okay? Now, when we were off-roading, most of the Land Cruisers we were driving had it turned off. But honestly, day to day, if this was my family car, I'd probably leave it on. I think it's providing you with more benefits than irritations. Really, the only irritation comes when, like, traffic is slowing down and it begins to slow you, and then you get back on the throttle, like it picks up again, and there's a little bit of a pull there when it changes over. But if you just, like, caress the gas pedal, it doesn't really do it. So I'm saying that as a driving enthusiast, and I know people are kind of like, no, like, any intervention is bad. Not when you're driving in traffic day to day, okay? Do I want it in my mountain car? No. If I took this, Bentley Bentayga, if I took this off-roading, would I turn it off? Probably, because it, you know, might freak out, like, you know, think something at your blind spot. So you can turn it on and off in the infotainment. So I don't really think it's anything to worry about. I appreciate all the safety systems. You know, it also has the forward to cross traffic alert, which you heard earlier. So this is, to quote Megan, a lovely vehicle to be behind the wheel of. And my thesis is, if you think it's just a fancy Land Cruiser, you're selling it a little short. Oh, by the way, one of the other things about the Lexus GX 550 that I found to be a little bit surprising is the cargo capacity. Now, you might be like, why would the cargo capacity of the GX 550 be at all surprising? It's the same as the Land Cruiser, isn't it? Well, no, it's actually not the same as the Land Cruiser, because the GX 550 here doesn't have a hybrid battery pack under the floor. Let me see if I can show you a little bit better. Let's do this, okay? Right down here in the Toyota Land Cruiser, that part is raised. So if you look here in the back of the GX 550, the rear floor actually slopes down a little bit. When you get back here, there's a little bit of a slope back there, but the rear floor is pretty flat going forward to the seats. Now you can get the GX 550 in a 3-row. I don't know why you would do that. I don't know what kind of lunatic you'd have to be to do that. Just get the TX, which is the massive 3-row SUV, and way better for that duty, unless you just really have to have the GX, I don't know. But anyway, this thing has about 46 cubic feet of cargo space, which is pretty good. That's not bad at all. Whereas the Land Cruiser only has 36, 37 cubic feet because that hybrid battery pack eats into so much of the cargo capacity. I didn't realize the difference was that big. When I was at the Land Cruiser reveal last year after the GX reveal, I knew that it had, you know, the battery pack underneath, but 10 cubic feet of space is significant in a vehicle of this size. So you want to keep that in mind if you're interested in something like the Lexus GX or the Land Cruiser.
Okay, we're in the Lexus GX 550, I think is what it's called. And the more I drive this car, the more I would like to keep this car. But it's a little too expensive for me, I think. I'm not sure how much it is. I'm sure Jack will tell you at some point later in the video. So let me talk about the drive. So I believe this is some sort of like...
The network is currently busy. Please try again later.
I don't know what that is. The Apple CarPlay is talking to us. So I believe it's like the Overland Trail version or something like that. It has off-road tires and like all the off-road stuff. So I told Jack about how good it drives, and he was like, oh, that's a pleasant surprise, because I guess with the off-road tires, it shouldn't be like a smooth ride, or he wouldn't have expected it to be. But it really is a smooth ride. So we've driven it, I've gone like, you know, like an hour in the car, and it's very comfortable. It's a very smooth ride. You do not feel the fact that you're on off-road tires. It doesn't feel like that. Now, the one thing that I wasn't sure if I liked is it's got, it's some new technology, Lexus technology or something, where it like brakes for you if the car in front of you is braking. And I have a sort of a love-hate relationship with it. I think you can turn it off. I'm pretty sure you can turn it off. So if you hated it, you could. But it is nice when you're driving and you're in traffic. It just can be a little jerky. So I have to like get used to it. Now, the more I drive it, I am getting more used to it. So it doesn't bother me as much as it did. When we first started, I was like, oh, I hate this. I am feeling car sick. So I don't feel like that anymore. So I'm definitely getting more used to it. And I do think it's a great safety feature, and it works really well. Like it brakes every time the car in front of me is braking, it brakes. But like I said, when you're in stop and go traffic, it can kind of be a little much, but you can turn that off. But other than that, like, I have no problems with the car. And like I said, I'm getting more used to that. You can turn it off. So I don't even think that's a problem. I just love the way this car feels. Like, I want to, like, it's fun. It's exactly the kind of car that I want. It's like a nice car. It's big enough that you can take people places, but it's not huge, no third row or whatever. I don't need a third row anymore. My kids are old. Sorry, Hallie's filming. You're not old, baby. You're just, I don't need a third row. It's got plenty of cargo space, but it's like, it's just so fun, which is exactly what I want. I want like a fun, but like useful car. And I feel like this fits the bill, except for the price tag. But I mean, what are you going to do? You know, you only live once. But yeah, I love it.
All right, doing this vlog style is a little bit more difficult. I had to do a couple of these when I was on that trip with Toyota and the Tacoma and the Land Cruiser, because you just got to do what you got to do. And this has been a crazy week. Flown out to Austin and back, and Megan had the car, and now we're reviewing it separately. But anyway, let's just kind of get over all that. I want to talk about this interior because I heard a lot of stuff when the GX came out about the interior. People were like, I don't think the interior is good enough. It doesn't look nice enough. It doesn't look Lexus enough. And what I said to a lot of those people was, it is. It's just very conservative in its design. If you look at the material quality, and I'll kind of touch things, and you'll just have to believe me. I mean, you believe me, right? If you look at the material quality here and on the soft touch on the dash here, and especially over here, this is the part I think a lot of people, they saw this and they were like, it just looks super boring even. And you compare this thing to something like the Land Rover Defender, which has a little bit more style, a little bit more panache, you know, with its sort of luxury nameplate. Yeah, this doesn't look quite as fanciful, but I promise you it is quite nice to the touch, and all the touch points are really good. Also, it's got little flourishes, like I'll show you in B-roll, the little green stripes, the kind of olive green on the back of the seats and stuff like that. Looks really good. Now, are there a couple of hard touch plastic areas, like, you know, kind of like down there? Yeah, there's a few. It's grained really nicely and it's very functional, but all the touch points and the important stuff are very soft leather, especially here on the sides of the console and stuff. Now, when your options, this is a loaded Overtrail model. This is an Overtrail Plus, and you've got your giant Lexus screen here. You got your digital gauge cluster. The screen is like 14 inches. Oh, the wind is picking up here. I'm duck into my Lexus. The screen is like 14 inches, but it's sort of like when you're using CarPlay, it's like 12, you know, functional. Same with the gauge cluster. My complaint about Lexus gauge clusters remains. They are kind of dull. They just don't have any cool style. In fact, I think some of the Toyota ones, like the Land Cruisers, actually look a little bit better. But you know, that's just a personal preference. The door cards are also pretty Spartan, but again, the materials are great. You got the Mark Levinson sound, you got the sunroof. I actually like the sunroof in this, by the way, because it is sort of this big, boxy, bright interior, and the windows are huge and the sight lines are great. So I actually like that it has the sunroof to just keep it even airier and brighter in here. You got the head-up display, heated and cooled everything, heated steering wheel. All of your off-road modes are, oops, hit the ceiling there. All of the off-road modes are right here, with your lockers here and all your crawl control stuff up here. Megan loves the traditional shifter instead of Lexus's little doohickey that they put in some of their others. You also have the cool box, which you can get in the Land Cruiser, but I like having that in these trucks. And then the seats are pretty great. Very soft, very glove-like leather. So no complaints about the interior. Oh, one more thing I wanted to point out about the interior while I'm thinking about it. I am almost 6'6", and so I fit perfectly well in here. That's not the impressive thing. You'd be like, it's a giant box, Jack. Of course you fit perfectly well inside of a giant box. Yes, but this is a giant box. When Megan got the car, she wasn't sure how to operate the head-up display to get it to raise or lower, so she actually lifted the seat so she could see it better. So this seat's actually raised quite high, and I still have a ton of headroom, even though I'm almost 6'6". That is how roomy this thing is, and well, I really appreciate that. Now, can I sit behind me? Let's find out. Running out of light here in the back seat. You can see what I'm talking about with this little olive strip right there. Looks fantastic. Now, you might be looking at my knees and you're going, well, wait a second. You said you could fit behind yourself. You can't. Well, this seat is actually motored back. It doesn't stay this far back. And so I can get behind myself in the Land Cruiser and this same vehicle, basically. And so that's really nice when you are, you know, almost 6.5 feet tall and you can sit behind yourself, because how many people are going to need to carry, you know, 6.5 feet people in front and behind each other? Our kids are very tall, but they're not that tall. So it is nice that this is roomy enough that you can sit here. If you had a family of 4 like ours, especially with, you know, kids who can drive, this is plenty. All right, should you buy the Lexus GX 550? Well, a lot of that depends on where you are in life, okay? Let me tell you where we are in life, in case you're new to the channel. Our kids are older. We have one in college, we have one in high school. Obviously, the one in college drives, and the one in high school will be driving soon. She's almost 15. So this is something that we are looking very strongly at, because Megan really wants a trucky, tough-looking SUV to replace our old Suburban that we got rid of, but we don't have the need for all the space anymore. And as someone who has gone on a number of these Toyota off-roading trips now, I actually really enjoy doing that, okay? I'm a sports car guy at heart, but I really like doing the off-roading thing. It's a ton of fun. Now, am I a diehard? Do I need a Jeep Wrangler or something like that? Not really, and to be quite honest, I would much rather have this over a Jeep Wrangler. This is a luxury SUV that also can do some insane things off-road. So kind of for where we are in life, this thing is pretty amazing. I love it. I really love it. And I also think that I like it more than I thought I would compared to the Land Cruiser. I was just sort of assuming that we were going to end up with a Toyota Land Cruiser. I was like, that's inevitable. The Land Cruiser's awesome. It does great things. And the GX 550 can't be that much different, right? Well, I was wrong. The GX 550 is that much better. It feels that much nicer on the inside. The powertrain is smooth, the gas mileage is negligible, but most importantly to me is that uprated ride quality. The KDSS system combined with the adaptive dampers and stuff just gives the GX550 a more premium ride and handling balance that I really appreciate. So let me know what you think. Do you think that the GX550, as you see it here, which is the better part of 90 grand, is worth it over the Toyota Land Cruiser, which is the better part of 75 grand? You're looking at a 15 to 20 grand upcharge depending on which model you choose and depending on options. Personally, if that money is not a deciding factor, I would take this all day, every day. However, if you're like us and you're pretty middle class and you do side jobs like YouTube on the side to earn more money, the price might sway you to the Land Cruiser. And having driven both in very close proximity, that is not a bad thing. And if our monthly payments can't say Lexus GX550, it would not be a bad thing if they could say Land Cruiser. The wind is picking up. This review week has been crazy. Please know that we both deeply love this vehicle. Try one out, test drive it. If you're looking at this versus the Land Cruiser, please take it for a test drive, to kind of compare. And we'll see you in the next review, hopefully on a better day.